They had a deal that when he comes here and work in this warehouse, what will Mr. Murdstone take care of and what will David take care of or pay for?
David will pay for his for the place that he'll stay in, and Mr. Murdstone will buy him food.
Will buy him food. Great. And the warehouse is for Mr. Murdstone's friend. Can you tell me what does he look like? Did we hear now or read now what did he look like?
He has no more hair in his head, and he's a middle-aged man.
Okay, continue, please. What's his name?
Micawber.
Micawber. Let's go.
Mr. Micawber's house was shabby, like himself. The first floor was unfurnished, and the blinds were kept down to fool the neighbors and the creditors and make them think no one was at home.
Okay, stop, please stop. Okay, so Mr. McBauer's house was shabby, like himself. It means that, was he a good man or not?
He's not a good man.
Because he doesn't take care of him?
And his house.
Yes. So the first floor was unfurnished, and the blinds were kept down to make the others think the opposite. The neighbors and the creditors, and make them think no one was at home. لما هو عنده creditors, do you think he's a good businessman or he's going to pay salaries for the employee he has?
He's a good businessman.
He is a good businessman, so how come he has creditors? Do you understand the word creditors?
Creditors دي يعني هو اللي متدين ولا هم الناس اللي متدينة؟
No, هو اللي متدين. هو اللي ليه الناس ليها فلوس عنده، so هو he fools them يعني بيخدعهم بيضحك عليهم ان هو he's not at home. So in this case, do you think هو هيدفع salaries كويسة للناس؟
No.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
David met Mr. Micawber, a thin-faded lady.
Mrs. Yes.
Mrs. Micawber, a thin-faded lady, and her 4 tiny children. The Micawbers were kind to David, and even though they were always short of money, they often invited him to share their own hot dinner and sit with them around the fire on cold nights.
Okay.
David was a frightened little stranger in a large, terrifying city. He worked from morning till night, feeling very
miserable
and without hope. He feared that he had already forgotten everything he had learned at school. His tears often mixed with the water as he washed the wine bottles.
Okay, let's go.
The Micawbers owed many bills and creditors came to visit them at all hours. The Micawbers' only solution was to pawn their few pieces of furniture. After
Okay,
wait.
So المكابرز كانوا دايما عندهم فواتير لازم يدفعوها وكانوا مديونين owed يعني كانوا they have to pay money for someone. دايما الناس بييجوا يخبطوا لهم على الدائنين يخبطوا لهم على الباب. سو الحل الوحيد انه يعمل ايه؟ انه يرهن. عارفه يعني ايه كلمه يرهن؟ يعني يقول له خد الكرسي ده وخليه عندك وانا عايز منك 10 جنيه. So later on لما يجيب له ال 10 جنيه يرجع ياخد الايه؟ الكرسي ده مش بيع، ده اسمه ايه؟ رهان pound. فهمتي؟ so هيخلص كل الفurniture بتاعه في الايه؟
في الباوند.
في الباوند. Thank you. Go ahead.
After work, David would help by taking a small table or a few chairs or a rug or blankets to a pawn shop and bring back a few shillings. However, Mr. Micawber always said something must turn up. At last, Mr. Micawber was arrested and taken to prison. Until he could pay his debts, his family was permitted to live with him in prison.
Oh my gosh.
Mrs. Micawber, although he was in a crisis, helped David find a cheap room near enough to the prison so that he could visit them in the evenings after work. There's something that Mr. McKern a rich relative, died in Australia and left him some money. He planned to pay off his debts and take his family there to live.
Okay. So can you say this again quickly? Now we said that he's going to pound his furniture. Then he couldn't do it. طبعا كان David always taking some of the furnitures and goes فين للpound shop. Though كل ده بيحصل وهو مستر ماكباور حاسس انه الدنيا ايه يعني دايما بيكون متفائل. Anyway, finally حصل ايه؟ They arrested him, they put him into jail, and they take a permission to take who to live with him?
Yes,
Who? Did they take to live with Mr. McPower?
his family.
His family, and they stayed there, though they still meet who? They still meet Mr. David, they still meet David. طيب, and how did they go out of this crisis? How did they go out of this crisis?
His rich relative.
What happened to him?
He died in Australia and left
And
him some money
so what did he do first of all?
to pay off his debts.
Then
Then to take his family to live there with him.
excellent. Go ahead.
David didn't want to stay in London without the Micawbers. He remembered the stories his mother and Peggotty had told him about his strange aunt, since she was the only relative he had in the world. David decided to find her and ask her to take him into her home, but he didn't know where she lived. So he wrote a letter to Peggotty and asked her where Miss Betsy lived. Peggotty's answer soon arrived that his aunt lived in Dover.
Okay. So let's have a questions in here. Number one, who's Betsy?
David's aunt,
And who's Peggotty?
the nurse that took care
Eh?
of David.
Okay. And why didn't David want to stay in London, do you think?
What?
Why didn't he want to stay in London?
Because he didn't want to live there without the Micawbers.
And where did the Micawbers go?
They went to Australia
To Australia. Okay. What did David decide to do?
to ask his aunt to live with her.
To live with him. Did he know where she is already?
No,
No. So what did he do?
he wrote a letter to Miss Peggotty, and then she answered him that his aunt is in Dover.
Great. Let's go next. David's 6 days journey to Dover.
David planned to hire a cart to take him and his small box of clothes to Dover, but the man he had hired took his money and his books and drove away. So David decided to go on foot. He slept out under haystacks or in the fields at night. At the end of 6 days, he was hungry, thirsty, and worn out. His hair hadn't been combed since he left London. He had even bound his clothes and only had rags on his body.
So what do you mean? The man he had hired took his money and his box and drove away. What does this sentence mean?
That the man stole David.
Yeah, and he ran away with all of his things. So how was his 6 days, do you think?
He was tired, hungry, and thirsty, and he didn't have money or any place to stay in.
Or anything. Okay, continue, please.
When he reached Dover, David was directed by a carriage driver to Miss Betsy Trotwood's house. It was a neat little cottage on a cliff overlooking the sea. David looked so miserable that he was afraid to knock at the door, so he stood at the gate until he saw a tall, slim, gray-haired lady come out the door. At first, Aunt Betsy shouted at him, "Go away," but David, trembling with fear, explained who he was and how he had suffered a lot until he reached her house.
What do you mean? What do you think, or why? Why Miss Bitsy shouted at him to go away? What did she think he is?
Uh, she thought that he's a homeless.
A homeless person, yes. So does this tell you that he changed a lot? As she didn't know him, did he change a lot?
Yes.
Yes, okay, go ahead. Miss Bitsy took David.
Into the house, put him on the sofa, and brought him something to drink. Then she called out, "Mr. Dick, please come in here. I need your advice."
Mm-hmm. Who's Mr. Dick? Do we know who's Mr. Dick, ya binti?
No.
Okay, let's go for it.
Mr. Dick was a pleasant-faced gentleman. He had a friendly smile, but his eyes held a strange bright look. He seemed to have childish ways about him. When Miss Betsy asked Mr. Dick what she should do with David, he said that she should wash him and feed him. When David told his aunt the full story of his mother's
Unfortunate marriage.
unfortunate marriage to Mr. Murdstone and of the way he had treated him, she cried, "Oh, that murderer!" David's aunt sent a letter to Mr. Murdstone, or Mr. Murder, as she called him. David was afraid he would come and take him.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Dick has got a longer name, Richard Babley, but he didn't like that name and only wanted to be called as Mr. Dick. He was always working on his book. He was also very proud of his large kite. David noticed that Mr. Dick wasn't quite sane. When he asked his aunt about this, she said he was a distant relation of hers and that he suffered a harmless illness. His family wanted in an asylum
Hi, asylum.
in an
Asylum.
asylum
Mm.
in, in an asylum for life. So she took him to live with her as a friend and advisor.
Go ahead.
One, one morning, the Murdstones arrived at Aunt Betsy's cottage. David felt very much afraid and he wanted to run and hide. Mr. Murdstone complained that David was a stubborn, disobedient boy who had given them much trouble. Miss Murdstone said that he was the worst boy in the world and they had come to take him back. Aunt Betsy then cried at their faces that they were cruel people who caused David's misfortune and suffering and caused his mother's death. Aunt Betsy ended her speech saying, "Good day, sir. Good day, ma'am. If I ever see you at my door again, I shall knock you down and stamp on you." So David began a new life with a new name, for his aunt chose to call him Trotwood Copperfield, and with two new guardians with hearts of gold.
Okay, who are those guardians? Who are the
Um,
guardians, ya Maryum?
I don't know.
Mr. Dick and his aunt Betsy. Oh. Okay.
Okay,
Are you looking to the screen or you're using your book?
I'm using my book.
Okay, close your book and now let's try to answer. I wish you remember the answers. It's easy anyway. Okay, the first question is, can you read please?
The Micawbers were poor, but they were kind and generous to David. Explain.
Explain.
Um, the Micawbers didn't have enough money, but and they had
They always did something to David. What did they do? I can't hear you يا بنتي.
but
مريوم صوتك بيقطع. مريم. يا مريوم. مريم. يا مريوم.
حضرتك يا
ايه يا قمر اللي بيحصل؟ النت عندك مش مظبوط ولا ايه؟ هو انت كده شايفة انهي شير اللي ظاهر لك؟
أنا مش ظاهر الكتابة.
اوكي. يلا بينا يا بابا. They were very poor, though they were generous to David. What happened? What did they do to David?
Uh, they shared their food with David and they took care of him and shared him everything.
Excellent. And they always sent him for?
For the pawn shop,
No. They sent him to, يعني I mean, they invited him for supper or for dinner, مش كده؟ طيب, how did he help them?
uh, took the furniture to the pawn shop and then uh, he comes back to them with some shillings.
Okay. Let's have the next question in here. بصي الانسرز اللي هو قالها. they invited him to a dinner with them and they treated him very nice as a member of the family. That's good. Even when he was put in prison, he was worried about David. He took care of him. Describe David's feeling while he was on his own in London.
David was frightened and miserable. He worked hard from morning till night without any hope for the future. He often cried quietly, but he didn't let anyone know about his suffering.
Great. Try not to read. Try to think the answer. What was Mr. McAlbert's problem? How did he try to solve it?
He had a lot of debts, so he had to pawn his furniture, to pay the bills on him.
Yeah, okay. And did he manage?
No,
No, he didn't. Okay. So what happened later? He was taken to
the prison.
the prison. Although Mr. Dick wasn't quite sane, Aunt Betsy always trusted his advice. ليه أو ازاي؟ Do you understand the question?
No,
Okay. Although Mr. Dick, who's Mr. Dick أصلا?
the man who's living with Aunt Betsy.
Okay. He was her relative مش كده؟ طيب. He was quite sane يعني مش يعني هو مش عاقل قوي، هو عنده حاجة كده في دماغه. Aunt Betsy كانت بتتعامل معاه بثقة وبتعتمد على الادفايسز بتاعته. Explain. اه
أنا لسه مش عارفة يعني أقول إيه يعني.
طيب بصي، هو دلوقتي مش هو سألها وقال لها يا عمته الشخص ده انا بلاحظ ان هو انسين، ان هو مش عاقل، او يعني عقله ضعيف شويه. سألها حضرتك ليه بتترشت هيم او سايباه يعيش هنا ليه؟ هي كان ايه ردها؟
لأنه كان شخص يعني مريض، وكانت عيلته عايزة تحطه في الملجأ.
كويس قوي. هي بقى شايفاه ازاي؟ هي كمس بيتسي شايفاه ازاي؟
A kind man, an
A kind
advisor.
man وان ادفايزر. يبقى هي رؤيتها ليه عكس اللي الناس شايفاه. انت فهمتي؟
اه
اللي هي شايفاه ان هي شايفاه he's a kind heart person، ان هو he can give advice in a good way. wise، هو شخص wise، هو شخص حكيم بالنسبة لها. علشان كده قررت تعمل ايه؟ تخليه يعيش معاها وتاخد وتستمع للايه، للادفايسز بتاعته. فهمتيني؟
اه
يعني الكلام المكتوب هنا Mr. Dick had some harmless illness ماشي of the mind but he was kind-hearted person. لغاية هنا مظبوط. Although he wasn't quite sane, he often said wise things in a metaphoric way, and Betty has always trusted his advice. She took him as a close friend and advisor. تقدري تاخده من الأربعة لاينز دول اللي احنا قلناه إن هو كان عيان بس طيب، وفي نفس الوقت بيقول advices wise، ولذلك هي خلته يعيش ايه؟ يعيش معاها. اوكي.
okay.
يلا قول لنا الكويستشن اللي بعده. what did David do after
The departure of the Micawbers from London. David didn't want to stay in London without the Micawbers, so he decided to, uh, uh, to ask his aunt Betsy uh, to stay with her in her house, but he didn't know where is she living, so he asked Miss Biggity, and Miss Biggity told him that she's living in Dover
Okay, great. Why did Mr. Murdstone go to Miss Bitsy?
because she wrote him a letter when David told her about what they did.
Yes, okay. الquestion اللي قبله كان بيقول إن David didn't want to stay in London. Tell me أو describe his journey from London to Dover.
Okay, David hired a cartman, to take him to Dover, and with his small box, and the man stole his money and that box. So David had to go there on foot. So he had to stay under haystacks and in the fields at night. Um,
And he
uh,
was
he was tired, hungry, and thirsty
excellent. Um, okay, why did Miss Bitsy refuse to let Mr. Murdstone have David again?
because Mr. Murdstone used to treat him very bad, and he was a cruel man.
Okay, what did she call Mr. Murdstone?
Mr. Murderer,
Mr. Murderer. Why did she call him that?
for what he David suffered from.
Okay, does she accuse him of killing his mom?
Yes,
Yes, okay. And when he came to her house with Mrs. Murdstone, how did she deal with them? What did she say?
told them that she don't want them to come there again, and
Mm-hmm.
if they came again, um, uh,
What will she do? She will knock them down يعني هترميهم على الأرض وكمان تعمل إيه؟ Stab on them وهتدوس عليهم. So she will knock them down and stab on them. طيب I guess إن الكومنتس مش هتكون أنت لسه قريتيها وعارفاها. That's my name and you are David Copperfield, the boy who live in my house. Okay. دي واضحة شوية. Who said these words تفتكري؟
Mr. McCower,
Demi Cowber. And who, of course, saying this too?
David,
Okay. Something, question number 11, something must turn up. Who's saying this all the time?
Mr. McCower,
مكعبر ذو ايه؟ هو دايما كان بيشوف something must turn up، حاجة هتحصل حلوة، بس ذو ايه اللي كان بيحصل معاه هو شخصيا مستر مكعبر؟
he had creditors and debts, and then uh, uh, he went to the prison.
And he went for the present, yes. No, no, no comments, I guess it's gonna be easy. Okay, who said he's the worst boy in the world?
Miss Murdstone,
Two,
to it's good.
Betsy when?
When Betsy wrote a letter to them, and then when they came there, they told her that David wasn't an obedient child, and that they want to take him back with them.
Okay. And they got them or they put them through hard times مش كده؟ So that happened when Mr. and Mrs. Murdstone came back or went to Mrs. Betsy's house. Was David there?
Yes.
How did he feel?
He was scared and he wanted to hide somewhere.
Did Miss Betsy agree for Mr. Murdstone to take David again?
No, she didn't.
She didn't. Was the speaker honest, ya Maryam? Was Mr. Murdstone honest about what he said about David?
No, he wasn't.
No, why? Why do you think? Or
Because
why
he
do you say
treated
that? Hmm.
because he treated David very bad, and he was cruel to him, used to cane him too, and
Mhm.
he didn't want David to go to the school or to meet his mother before her death.
Yes, and he decided to take him out of the place after after his mom's death. He took him out of the country خالص كلها صح? Out of the place they were at. He was in London and he went to the warehouse where? In London too?
Yes.
Okay. Rubbish. I don't believe a word of it. You two are no better than murderers. Who said that تفتكري؟
Miss Betsy said this
طبعا
to the Murdstones.
to the Murdstones. And why did the speaker say that they were murderers?
For for how they treated David before, and that uh, made David suffer from a lot of bad things.
Okay. If you please, Aunt Betsy, I am your nephew, David Copperfield. Who said that and when?
David said this when he went to Dover to meet his aunt. When she saw him and shouted at him, he told her that, and he told her about the Murdstones and what he suffered from.
Excellent. You deserve to be punished for sending a 10-year-old boy out to earn his own living while you lived comfortably in a house that really belongs to David. بصي من غير ما نكون قريناها احنا اكيد عارفين مين اللي قالها. Who do you think said this?
Miss Betsy.
طبعا to who?
The Murdstones.
The Murdstone.
When they came to visit her.
Yes. I know ان الاجابات كلها رايحه راجعه بس احنا محتاجين عشان نثبت الستوري بس. Okay. Does he know where I am? Shall I have to go back to him? مين اللي هيسأل السؤال ده؟ Shall I go back to him? مين هيسأل السؤال ده؟
David.
أكيد هيسأله لمين؟
Miss Betsy.
لما حصل إيه؟
When she shouted at him.
When she shouted at him?
Oh.
لا هو هيرجع مع مين؟ هو متخيل إنه ممكن يرجع مع مين يا مريم؟
Murdstone.
مع الميرجستون. يبقى when the Murdstone visited Betsy's family مش كده أو Betsy's house. He was
Oh.
afraid إنه إيه يعمل إيه إن عمته تعمل إيه أو إن his aunt تعمل إيه.
That she sent him with the Murdstones.
She will send him back. Okay. خلينا ناخد الquestion ده. What job was David asked? Okay. What job was David asked to do in the warehouse? Have we cut this one?
To collect the wine bottles.
Okay, and describe Mr. Quaber's, what's that? Cowber's, sorry, appearance.
Um,
Remember
middle-aged.
احنا قلنا ايوه.
He was a middle-aged man with
Mm-hmm.
no hair on his head.
اوكي بس احنا عايزين كمان الابيرنس، كان شكله ايه؟ شابي. شابي يعني كان هدومه كده ايه؟ مبهدله. he didn't take care of himself.
Okay.
طيب why were the blinds in Mr. Micawber's house always kept down؟ علشان يعمل ايه لو تفتكري؟
To fool the neighbors,
yes ومين كمان neighbors ومين كمان؟
the creditors
creditors that there is no one.
in the house.
Okay. Did he believe right in his that something must turn up? Did he believe that something will turn up?
Yes,
Though his circumstances. Why did David decide to leave London?
because he didn't want to stay there alone without the Micawbers and
After
to
they
go
left, yes. Where did he decide to go?
to his aunt Betsy
How did he know where she lives?
by writing a letter to Betsy, and then she told uh, and then her answer was that Aunt Betsy is living in Dover
Okay, why did David have to go to Dover on foot?
because when he hired a cartman, the man stole his money and his books.
Why was Aunt Betsy shocked when she first saw him?
Because because of his appearance, he didn't comb his hair for a lot of days, and he was hungry, and his uh clothes wasn't clean.
Okay. So you just sent me this one, huh?
Oh,
Okay. طيب عايزة ورقة وقلم منك لو سمحتي يا حبيبتي.
okay. Okay, Miss Gupta.
طيب أنا عايزاكي تكتبي ال questions دي علشان تبدأي تحليها وتبعتيها لي لو سمحتي. احنا ده chapter 5 مش كده؟ طيب describe describe the warehouse. Describe the warehouse من غير بقى تفاصيل، انت عارفة ان احنا بنتكلم على مارجستون جرينبي's house.
Okay.
Okay. What was the jobs for the boys in that warehouse? What were the jobs? What were the jobs for the boys in the warehouse? وبعدين هنقول what was David's job. يعني ده كده سؤالين مع بعض.
Okay.
Third question, who would take David to live with him? Who would take David to live with him?
Okay.
Describe or why was the Cowbers always short of money? Why was the Cowbers always short of money?
Okay.
اوكي. شايفه، بصي انت شايفه معايا هنا البيكتشر دي، the second part اللي هي دي. he worked from morning till night feeling very miserable and without hope. انا عايزاكي تحطي جنب الجمله دي comment. تعرفي طبعا، انا عارفه يعني ايه نشتغل comment ازاي، صح؟
يعني أكتب الجملة دي وأعمل عليها comment.
اه، انا عايزاكي تعملي لي عليها كومنت. طبعا هنا الكومنت مش هيكون مين قال لمين امتى وازاي، انا عايزاكي توصفي لي مشاعر ديفيد، وليه هو حاسس انه miserable، وليه حاسس ان هو ما عندوش امل في الحياه، فهمتي؟
اه.
يعني عايزاكي تخشي في موضوع تعبيري بسيط كده عن مشاعر مستر ديفيد، هو ليه حاسس انه miserable وليه حاسس ان هو without a hope. ناخد اللي بعدها.
اوكي ماشي.
Okay. How did David help the Cowbirds in their problems? How did he help the Cowbirds in their problem?
اوكي.
How did the Cowbirds get out of their crisis? How did the Cowbirds get out of their crisis? في كمان واحدة كومنت هتاخدي عليها مكافأة حلوة قوي لو عملتيها زي ما أنا عايزاها. David didn't، بصي عندي هنا أهي. David didn't want to stay in London without the Cowbirds. اعملي عليها كومنت. وعايزاكي عشان تفهمي الإجابة اللي أنا عايزاها، مريم سامعاني؟
اه.
عشان تفهمي الإجابة اللي أنا عايزاها، عايزاكي تركزي إنه لما فكر إنه مش هيعيش من غير الميكاوبرز، أول حد فكر فيها هيز إيه؟
كانت.
هيز أنت. ماشي، عشان تعرفي بس أنا عايزة إيه إجابة بالظبط.
يعني أكتب الفيلينجز بتاعته والثوتس يعني.
قربتي. طيب هي الفيلينجز بتاعته دي معناها إنه هو كان حاسس بإيه مع الميكاوبرز؟
لأنه كان، يعني أكتب أحاسيسه يعني. أكتب.
حاولي تقولي لي دلوقتي إيه أحاسيسه يا مريم.
آه with a cowbell, he was feeling, he felt happy for staying with them, um, and he helped them with their crisis,
مهم.
and that he stayed in a room near to the prison to visit them.
طيب عايزة أسألك كمان سؤال. Why didn't he think that he may stay in London and then he find another family like the Cowbers؟ يعني ليه على طول فكر إنه يسيب المكان ويرجع لهيز aunt؟
آه ممكن الميرستونز ممكن يعرفوا مكانه وياخدوه تاني.
اوكي، وممكن حاجة تاني، انه هو he felt like they are his family, already his family, because he was too connected to them او too close to them. ولذلك اول ما هم مشوا، اول حد فكر فيها انه يروح للايه؟
بس
اللي هي برضو part of a family. فهمتي هنا بقى اقصد ايه؟ اقصد ان هم كانوا بالنسبة له as a family. They took care of him, they invited him to supper, they cared him. فاول ما هم مشوا هو حس ان هو he's missing
family.
his family. Thank you very much. David planned to hire. احنا خلاص قتلنا دي بحثا وأسئلة. When he reached Dover, David was directed to encourage by driver Miss Betsy. بصي بقى السؤال ده هيبقى يعني ايه غريب شوية عليكي. بصي كده الجزئية دي هنا. When
اه.
he reached Dover، من أول هنا. David was directed by a carriage driver to Miss Betsy، مش كده؟
اه.
حولي دي، احنا بنسميها مبني للمعلوم مبني للمجهول، اللي هي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يعني عايزاك تبدأي ب carriage driver. دي جرامر بالمناسبة، دي بره الستوري خالص. عايزاك تبدأي بكلمة carriage driver وتكملي الجملة. بتكتبي ولا بتفكري؟
هكتب عندي.
طيب، وبعدين آخر سؤال بقى، أو لسه خلينا نشوف فيه أسئلة تانية كويسة ولا لا. words house. Okay, describe Miss Betsy's house. describe Miss Betsy's house. وده ما فيهوش كلام كتير يعني. Okay, talk about Mr. Dick.
Okay.
كده how many questions يا مريوم؟
كده يبقوا 11.
ناخد واحد كمان، معلش، واحد كمان، واحد كمان، واحد كمان، واحد كمان.
Okay.
هو السؤال انا سألته لك قبل كده. شايفة آخر قطعة هنا عندي. So David began a new life with a new name for his aunt chose to call him مش عارفة ايه الاسم اللي هنا ده Copperfield and with two new guardians. انا عايزاكي بس يعني ايه من اول، خليها كلها كده وهناخد عليها كلمة comment. انت هتاخدي منها الإجابات برضه with hearts of gold. عايزة عند الحتة دي السؤال ده خليه comment. ده آخر question، ده كده 12 مش كده يا مريوم؟
يعني comments لكل الجملة.
دي اللي هي الجزئيه الاخيره دي. so David began a new life. ممكن من هنا تقولي comment، بس انا اللي فارق معايا من اول هنا and with two new guardians with hearts of gold. المطلوب هنا في الكومنت ده انك اولا طبعا هتقولي مين هم التو guardians وليه هم عندهم hearts of gold اصلا. فهمتي؟
Okay.
وليه يعتبروا بالنسبه له guardian. يعني
Oh,
اصلا احنا اتفقنا ان التو guardians دول مين ومين.
Miss Betsy and Mr. Dick.
اوكي، تفتكري ليه مس بيتسي considered a guardian بالنسبه له و heart of gold.
Because when he told her about his life and the
Mhm.
milestones, she wrote a
Mhm.
letter to them. And then when they came to her house, she didn't allow him to take David back with them. And
Excellent.
she told him that if they're back there to her house, she knocked them off and she will scram them.
Great. And what about the next one or the other one? Who's the next, the other guardian?
Mr. Dick.
Again, please.
Mr. Dick.
Yes, Mr. Dick. And why is he heart of gold?
Because when Miss Betsy asked for his advice, he told her that she have to feed him and to change his clothes and wash him.
And wash him, yes.
Um,
Ah,
and he was a kind man,
he's a kind man, and of course he will be kind to me, to
David.
David. يبقى هي دي الجزئية اللي أنا عايزاكي تتكلمي عنها، إن هو إنه التو جارديانز دول هيكونوا بيتسي والديك، والاتنين أصلا good hearted أو gold heart because هم هيعملوا كذا وكذا وكذا معاه. فهمتيني؟ طيب احب اشوف الحاجات دي النهارده يا مريوم، علشان ايه؟ نشوف الدنيا بكره هيكون فيها ايه. خليكي معايا لحظه واحده كده نقفل بقى ده.